And you know, us sports moms have something to say.
Yes, we do.
We'll have a chance to interview across the board, from athletes to the parents to the coaches to even the trainers.
And we're not afraid to share our journey. We're not afraid to tell other moms what we went through in order to raise up a student athlete. So I believe that it's inspirational.
We able to tell our story, the good and the bad.
We can give back positive information.
Absolutely.
You know, we can empower them.
Yes, I think it's time for the mothers to be a voice.
Yes.
That's it.
It's time for us to let you know what's going on.
What's up? What's up? It's your, I'm going to do it like Shannon. What's up? What's up? It's your girl, Karen on Can We Talk Sports, and I am here with my host,
Kawashika, how are you?
Shannon's probably going to die laughing, because most of the time when she, you know, she got that energy and we're trying to do it like her, and I'll be like, Karen, tone it down.
Yes.
What's going on, Kawashika?
Ooh, just a lot of resting. I think, you know, God just, he has us in this place where we need to rest. Get ready for this new week. I just believe this is about to be some great things happening this week. So I'm excited. I am excited. You got to speak those things in existence. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I feel it too. I just feel like I'm on the verge of something great.
Yes, a breakthrough. Like open. Right there.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
I feel it too. I'm just like, okay, be anxious for nothing. Be anxious for nothing. But I just feel like I'm just on the verge of my greatness.
Yes. It's we here. We right there. Don't give up. Don't give up.
Yes. So what you got planned for this week?
Oh, a lot of business calls. I can't tell everything right now, but a lot of business calls, a lot of working on self still. I just think that's very important for us as a whole, you know, and we'll see what happens, you know, a lot of new connections. I'm telling you, it's gonna be big. It's just like you don't know, but you know, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, you just you know, you give it unto him who's able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we can ask or think. And so in that, you just like, okay, I know you about to do something, because that's what the word says. So I know, and it's just like you're just holding on to it. So I feel it. And you know, I am too, focusing on self-care, taking care of myself, because you know, I've been working from home. And so at one point I was like, you know, I was begging for my job to let me work from home. But now that I'm working from home, I'm ready to go. I would rather go back to the office, because you just sit here and you sit here and you eat and you sit here, and it takes away from any kind of moving, any type of activities. It's none. And so my feet were starting to swell, and I'm like, okay. And then my boss was calling me and saying that 5 hours mandatory overtime, and I was like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that.
Yeah.
And so he had the nerve to say, last year you did 30 hours. And I told him that was before COVID-19. That was before I realized how precious life was. That was before I gained weight from working from home. That was before I had a grandbaby. And that's before my feet started to swell.
Wow.
And he didn't respond to me no more.
Oh, you like, okay. That's enough said, right?
Right.
Yeah. Me on the other hand,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say me on the other hand, Miss Karen, is totally different. This past week our team at work had a meeting, and we're not coming back. It's gonna be a while, and so they really don't know when we're coming back. And so, he asked, my supervisor asked, do anybody got questions? Do they want to say anything about? And I'm in my heart, I'm like, I gotta talk, I gotta speak up. And so I let them know. I said, you know what? I'm gonna be honest with you. Since I've been home, I've been doing phenomenal in my performance. I mean, just being transparent, and for one, safety for the kids, because I don't want to go back into a workplace and then come back and bring it back to my home, my kids. So that's number one. And number two, I am doing an awesome job in my performance, right? So I want to stay home. This was a blessing for me. Right before COVID hit, and I was just telling the Lord, I said, Lord, I am wore out. I am. I go here, I go there, I do this, I do that. And it just, I hate, in a situation, bad things, but the word says all things work together for the good of those who love you. It no purpose. So this work from home is totally different for me. Of course, I have to deal with a little one, but I can manage that. Listen, at least I know she's safe, and then, like I say, I'm just doing a phenomenal job. So this is an actual blessing for me, and I thank God for it. So I'm sorry, Miss Karen, I can't agree.
Well, I worked 30 years. So it's time for me to move on somewhere else. So they tired of my mouth. They're tired of my mouth. But but I am grateful. I am grateful. I truly know it was God that gave me that job, and I'm definitely grateful to have it. It's just that the season. I believe the season is up right now. So but COVID-19 is trying to creep back out. So we need to go back in. Because we ready to come out. I'm ready to get out and start working out and doing some other things other than being locked up in the house. But there were some good things that COVID-19, it caused people to, have to have some quality time with their families. There's some things that it made us think in a whole nother level. Everybody's online and doing lives and stuff like that. So
that's right.
Hands up and down. But I am excited for our guest on the show tonight. We have a basketball coach. See, have we had any basketball coaches or talk basketball? But anyway, we have a basketball coach, and so we're excited to bring him on the show. We're gonna call him Coach Ryan because I'm gonna have to let him pronounce that last name. I don't want to mess it up. But welcome to the show, Coach Ryan. Hey, Coach.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me on. Great to be here.
Glad to have you on, man. What is going on in the football and in the basketball world? I say football in the basketball world. What is going on?
All the same everywhere else. Trying to figure out this COVID-19 when we can get back to hooping and playing, and that's about the same all over the place, I think.
Well, how about you start out telling us a little bit about yourself and start out by pronouncing your last name, and then tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so Krueger, like Freddy Krueger. I get that a lot, so that's the easy way to remember it. But I was in coaching for about 19 years. I've coached in prep school. I coached, in the New England prep school for a few years. I've coached in the DC public school for a few years. Coached in Division I at the low major, mid major, and high major levels at University of Oklahoma, Rutgers, at Virginia Commonwealth University, at Lehigh University. And I've been fortunate enough to spend some time in the NBA. Spent 4 years with the New Jersey Nets, and spent 4 years in the G League, the NBA G League, with the Detroit Pistons team. in Grand Rapids, the Grand Rapids Drive. So I've been fortunate to work for a lot of people and see a lot of different ways to do things, and get to coach the game of basketball at a lot of different levels, which has been great to see and great to experience.
Now, with all that experience, did you play basketball?
So I played. I'm very slow, and that's not a good thing in basketball. So I wanted to play in college, but I knew coaching was more my speed. So I quickly figured that out and worked my way towards that goal instead.
What position you played?
So I played on the wing. I was just a little slow. I could shoot that thing, but everything else was a little bit of a struggle.
Oh, wow.
Now, we on the show we talk about the backup plan for our athletes, having a backup plan if things don't work out. Can you kind of tell us what was it that happened in your life to make you say, "Hey, it may not work out as far as I don't know, college level or NBA level. I need to focus more on the coaching." What happened in your life that made you make that turn?
Yeah, so I think the influence of my parents was probably the biggest thing. And I always wanted to play basketball in North Carolina. I was obsessed with the Tar Heels, still am. But there was a point in high school where I realized I still may be able to play college basketball, maybe not. But if I do, it's still probably not going to be it as a Tar Heel. So, I kind of switched my focus up to a different level of Division One, and then started opening my eyes to Division Three as well. But ever since I was little, my family has always preached the value of academics and how that carries with you no matter what happens in athletics or anything else. So one day you're going to be too old to play basketball, to play football, to run a route, or to kick a soccer ball, whatever it may be. They'll never be able to take your education away from you. When you're 60, you'll still have that incredible education. So I always knew the value of that, and I think constantly, I didn't always want to hear it as a kid. I want to be a Tar Heel. I want to be an NBA draft pick, Mom. But when you hear it enough and you see your brother and your sister value that, and go to really good schools and value their education, and you kind of just one day it just clicks with you. And that was, I'm forever indebted to them, my entire family, but especially my parents for that.
Now, is that the kind of coaching style that you had when you had kids that you were coaching? Did you kind of stay on the importance of education and kind of teach and bred that into those athletes?
So I did. I think no matter how talented you are, I think your education is really important. One thing I feel like coaches try to limit players in one way or another too many times. And I heard too many people tell me I'm never going to be an NBA player. And for me, it was true. But I've also heard people tell other players, you're not going to be an NBA player. And they went on to become NBA players. And I've heard them say, you're not a Division I athlete. You're not going to get a scholarship. And they went on to get a scholarship. So to me, that's just the wrong approach to take. And I think you use athletics for everything that you can get from it. And if you can become a professional, whether that's in the NBA or if that's, playing in a top league in Italy or somewhere, if someone's going to pay you money, good money to play the game of basketball, I think you have to do everything you can to make that happen. Also, at the same time, I think you can also prepare for your future by, having a backup plan and,
Right.
Valuing your education, having a plan after your career is over. So, now I just had a hard time with people trying to short sell players and maybe squashing some of their dreams because we as coaches don't always know. I coached a kid at Lehigh University who very few teams recruited, who's now an NBA potential all-star and has made over $100 million playing the game of basketball. So 99.99% of the players that come to Lehigh or they play in the league that he was in have no chance to ever play in the NBA. So many coaches are right to say you probably won't, but they'd be wrong to say that about this kid. So, take athletics, take sports for whatever you can get from it, and then just always have that backup plan, and education should be a big part of that.
Right. That is so good. That is so good.
Oh.
What came to me real quick, Coach, when you was talking about the short sale. Yeah, I didn't realize that there are not coaches. I didn't realize till now coaches do that, but teachers um, tell a lot of kids that they're not going to be nothing. And I'm just wondering why. Is that a personal thing? Because
That's
how
a
do
good.
you know? Do you
Yeah,
see in their future? You
that,
mad at them at that time they didn't do their assignment? I'm sorry.
no, no, no. You're exactly right. I've never understood anybody, trying to short sell somebody or put somebody else down. To me, what gets lost in coaching is uh, the impact that believing in a player can have on them and building their confidence and seeing their confidence change. I had a player at the G League level who was potentially an NBA player. Tell him that it was the first time in 5 years that he thought a coach had believed in him. And it blew my mind, but I don't think it's all that uncommon because this guy was all league at the Division I level. He was one of the best players, in the G League at the time. And the 5 years prior to that, he felt like no one believed in him. So how much motivation can you have? How can you pursue your dreams? How can you give it everything you have when you feel like people don't believe in you and people don't have confidence in you? And I think a big part of that, and I don't know the full reason is, but I just seen coaches at every level and teachers and leaders do the things or use the techniques that people used on them, and because that's all they know. But there has to be a better way. So one of my philosophies in coaching was just to every single day be trying to find the best way to do something. And I just felt like building people up was a better way to do things than something I had seen or something a famous coach had done. Or Bobby Knight yells at his players, so I need to yell at my players. That's just not my personality. That's not what would motivate me. When people yell and scream and curse me out, that doesn't make me play harder or try and fulfill my potential more. Someone that believes in me, someone that fills me with confidence. And then every once in a while, you have to be able to hold kids accountable. So coaches have to be able to get on kids, no doubt about it. But just that constant berating, putting kids down, I don't think that brings out the best in anybody, let alone young kids.
See, I thought that was a way that men deal with boys, is making them tough and brave is, how they, talk to the boys. And so, it's like the mommy stay back, let the men deal with the men. And I thought that's just a way you deal with a young man as far as talking to him crazy.
So, and I don't want to say one way is better than the other. I wouldn't want my kids to play in a system like that. And I know in football it's different than in sports like wrestling where toughness and that's how it's always been. So I understand where it comes from, but it still doesn't make sense to me. It, someone if someone came to work and yelled and screamed and cursed me out every day, it wouldn't make me do my job any better. It wouldn't make me work harder. It wouldn't make me want to fulfill my goals and dreams. Someone filling me with confidence, telling me that they believed in me over and over, even when I wasn't performing on my best. That's what works for me. That's what I've seen have success with young people. So, that's just my personal preference. Bobby Knight won a lot of games yelling and cursing and throwing chairs. So I'm not here to pass judgment, but that's just not. I think kids are different these days. I think our society is different, and we as coaches have to adapt. We as leaders have to adapt. We can't just say this is what was done to me. This is what was done to my father, my grandfather. So that's what I'm going to do. That's not the best way to do it. The best way to do it is to reevaluate and see what's the best way for these kids today.
Yeah, totally different generation. Totally different. They can't take what we have, have endured in the past. So I totally agree with you on that. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So coach, by you being a college coach and an NFL coach, do you have that eye where you can really see talent at a young age? You can see somebody and say, he gonna be in the NBA.
So I think one of the hardest things in all of sports at any sport at any level is evaluation, because so many things can change And I mean, I go back to the kid CJ McCollum, who's a star for the Portland Trailblazers right now. There are 100 high major Division I schools that wanted absolutely no part of recruiting him. Oh, he's from Ohio. Ohio State had no interest. Michigan State had no interest, and he came to Lehigh. And as a freshman, he was Conference Player of the Year. Was like top 15 in the country in scoring. So by his junior year, he's on NBA draft radar. So to be able to look at kids, I think so many things go into the evaluation process, and I think it's incredibly hard to get it right consistently, and I think it's very, very easy to get it wrong. And because again, I think we sell kids short or don't see, hey, maybe he's not in the right system, or maybe he's not playing for the right coach, or maybe maybe he is more talented, and maybe the head coach's son is the point guard and just doesn't pass the ball, or there's 100 things that could be the reason for someone not shining or showcasing their full potential. So I think for me, when I saw CJ McCollum, I had no part in recruiting him, but when he showed up at Lehigh, I did not say this guy is a surefire first round NBA draft pick. Now there was a point where I said, this kid has a chance to play in the NBA. And then I said, this kid's definitely going to play in the NBA. But it took some time, and I got to see him every single day. So I just think people underestimate the difficulty that goes into evaluating talent at all sports. And I think football has got to be one of the toughest. They don't even get to see the football players in just football games. I know football coaches go to evaluate them at basketball games in the winter, and wrestling matches, and track events, and what does track have to do with football? I mean, I guess speed and all those things. I've never been a part of it, but to not even be watching them play their sport, that's just got to be an incredibly difficult process. But I do think some people, that keep an open mind, have more likelihood of success properly evaluating student athletes than other people who watch them once. He has a bad game, and they just say, he's not tough enough. He could never play for me, or he's not a shooter. I've sat at basketball games where the best shooter I've ever seen went like 1 for 10 from 3. And our coach said, this guy can't shoot. I said, Coach, you got to trust me on this one. I've seen him 20 times. This was the worst I've ever seen him shoot. He could be the best shooter in our league. But because, either we're short-sighted or, fixed on this or that, we don't put everything into the evaluation process that it takes, and it's harder than coaching. It's harder than most things we do as coaches, and I think it's the most important thing, because if you get the right players, if you get the right talent, I can make some mistakes as a coach, and we're still going to be okay, because we have NBA player, we have a CJ McCollum, we have the right players. I can have a bad player, I can mess up a timeout or miss something. Our players are still really good. They're gonna make me look good and cover up for me. So evaluation is critical. I think it's the most important thing we do, and I think you have to put as much as you can into the process, because I don't think there's anything more important than the people in your program, whether that's the coaches you hire or the players that you sign and recruit.
Now, tell me about the G League. Tell me what the NBA G League is, and how did you become a coach?
Yeah, so the G League is a fast-growing league, and it's basically the NBA minor leagues, and it grew from something that not many people had heard of or knew of, a league that the NBA didn't pay a whole lot of attention to something that every NBA team in 2020 values, pours money into, and really sees the value in having this opportunity to develop players. And it's incredible to me the percentage of NBA players who have either G League experience or have come through the G League in some form or fashion. I believe it's over 40%. So if you look at the 450 or however many NBA players there are, to know that over 40% of them at one point have either been in the G League, have used the G League in some shape or fashion, It shows the importance of the G League, and it grows every single year. There's more televised games. There's more two-way players signed. There's just an incredible importance attached to the G League, and that's a great thing. I think it helps the game of basketball. I think it helps NBA players or NBA teams, and I think just a really important resource for the game of basketball to have a minor league system here in the States where players want to play and they don't want to go. They don't want to go to Germany. They don't want to go to France or Italy. They want to stay here in the States. They want to live in the States, and they want to play against the best basketball players on the planet that we have here. And it's an incredible resource that the NBA has built into something really valuable.
So the G League is came into play to keep players from going to another country and play. So it's now like having that step down teams from the NBA that play here in the States.
So it's really a unique league because there's a lot of different types of players playing in the G League. Most teams have two-way NBA players that was just instituted a couple of years ago. So these are NBA players who most of their time is spent playing in the G League. But technically they're part of the Washington Wizards. They're part of the Dallas Mavericks. But most of their days are going to be spent with the G League team. So it's a resource for that NBA team to get these guys playing opportunities where they'd obviously never play at the NBA level. They're getting real game experience and getting to make mistakes and grow through that and learn and improve their skills. So you have those type of players. Typically you have some unsigned free agents who are very close to becoming an NBA player. And even if they play for the Dallas Mavericks G League team, they're a free agent. So, the Atlanta Hawks could come in and say, we like this guy. We have a spot open on our roster. He's been playing really well in the G League. We'd like to offer him a contract. So that's really a cool thing. So it hurts your team when one of your players gets signed. But our goal in Grand Rapids was never to win the championship. That was something we were always trying for. But our goal every day was to help put our players in a better situation. And if them leaving our team in Grand Rapids hurt our team, but helped them get an NBA contract, that was a win for everybody. So, and then you have some players that are just kind of filling out the roster that were very good Division I players that are trying to use this opportunity, maybe as a bench player, to position themselves to get a more lucrative contract over in Europe. Maybe their goal may actually be to go to overseas and play for $80,000 or try to get a $100,000 contract, things like that. So you kind of have all these ends of the spectrum. And it's kind of a unique place because everybody is trying to showcase themselves. Right. So you get a lot of different mindsets and you get a lot of different people, trying to showcase themselves. They're hearing from a lot of different people. Their agents telling them one thing, their college coaches telling them one thing. And then my job is try to get everybody to play the right way, to share the basketball, to play together. And it's a difficult challenge, but I was fortunate. We had great high character players in Grand Rapids, and our thing was we all shine brightest when we all shine. So, when everybody was shining, we were making each other look better. And we won a lot of games, and they covered up a lot of my mistakes. And I got a lot of credit because we won some games and made the playoffs and things like that. But that was because we had really good players who bought in and listened to what I had to say. And, it was a really cool experience for me, but it's a great opportunity for basketball in the States because it's something that we've never had. And I think a great resource.
Right. You said something awesome, Coach. They listen to you. So your team has to be coachable, right? That's a big part, right?
Without a doubt. And the interesting thing to me, I love coaching professionals. I love coaching grown men. I've coached high school and college, and I loved everywhere I've ever been. The players are the reason I'm in it. That's why we're supposed to be coaching. But the great thing about professionals and, grown men, they never just listened to me or did what I said because I was the coach. And I thought that was great. I had to earn their trust and their respect. They had to be they had to be doing things because it made sense to them, because it would help them, because they knew I believed in them, because uh, a million things. And I think that's different. At high school, you have to do what the coach says because he's the coach, and you're just this 15-year-old kid. And I don't love that. I think there's a lot of great coaches out there, but I think there's some coaches who abuse that privilege that we have as coaches. And I think the younger the players we coach, the harder it is for kids to speak up when something's not right or things like that. But there was a back and forth trust that had to be earned from the players because that they were guys with potentially NBA contracts on the line. And I took over at the start of the season after we had played 12 games, and they knew I was a nice guy and all those things, but they didn't know what I would be like as a head coach. And they bought in. They gave me an opportunity to coach them. They gave me an opportunity to make some mistakes, own up to my mistakes. They did the same, and that was one of our key tenets as well, was taking responsibility for ourselves. And when I made mistakes, those got highlighted in the coach's film session. So I didn't want the film sessions to be about just the players not doing this and the players not doing that, and you guys aren't doing this. That blows my mind. We're all in this together. And we started a lot of film sessions with the mistakes I made in the game the night before, and then I highlighted, look, fellas, we still came out of here with a double, and that W because you guys made me look good. You covered up my mistakes. Hopefully I did some things that put you guys in good positions, and I made some good calls or things like that. And it really built a trust, I felt like, with the players and a mutual respect, which I think is the way it should be. But again, a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and a lot of ways to coach athletics.
Now, what is the average salary for the players in the G League?
So it's not a lot. It's a lot more than it used to be. Some players in the G League, when I started 5 years ago, were making $13,000, and that was, some players were making 13, some were making 19, and others were making, I think it was 25. And that at that time 5 years ago was considerably better than it had been prior to that. Now everybody makes, I believe it's $35,000 for about 6 months. They get free housing and free, health insurance and the like. So pretty good, not great. I think there's still some work that can be done there, but not everybody's getting $100,000 and $200,000 offers to go overseas. So $35,000 for 6 months of work with free housing and insurance to get an opportunity to showcase yourself in the States in this country is a pretty good opportunity. And then, the other tricky part is those two-way players that I talked about. They make a prorated NBA salary, and I don't know the exact details, but they're making, I don't know if it's $250,000 or somewhere around there. So there's a tricky dynamic where you have these NBA two-way players, that make considerably more money, that are probably getting most of the minutes, getting most of the shots and the touches and things like that. And they're not always with the team. They might be with the NBA team and then just show up for a G League game. So we would have G League players with us every day, grinding, practicing hard, traveling in tiny planes and connections and all this kinds of stuff, and leaving their heart and soul on the floor every day for us and for themselves, to better themselves, to give themselves an opportunity. So there's a real strange dynamic. And again, that can go south pretty quickly. So I was fortunate to have talented players who were high character guys who never they pushed each other, they motivated each other, but they were there to help each other. And they knew that, again, if we all shine the brightest when we all shine, they knew that if one of us helped each other, we all look better. And that's not always the case in the G League. So I was very fortunate.
Now, let me understand this. Okay, so you have the NBA draft, and they draft so many players, but you can only have 15 players on a team. So the NBA team gets their 15 players, and whoever is left, they automatically go to the G League, or how does that process work?
Yeah, so it's kind kind of tricky. For a long time, NBA teams had 15 players. That's all you could have, and they just stayed with the NBA team all the time. A few years ago, and I don't know if it was 3 or 2 or 4 years ago, they basically added 2 players to NBA rosters. So NBA rosters now have 17 players on the roster. 2 of those players are what they call these two-way players. And there's a limit to the number of days that these two-way players can be with the NBA team. And what that does is it kind of forces teams to leave them with their G League affiliate most of the year. If the NBA team has some injuries or if the G League or if the two-way player is just playing incredibly well, at any time they can call him up to the NBA club, and he's eligible to play in those NBA games. A lot of times teams are using that from a developmental perspective. A guy that they think has a chance to be an NBA player that might not be there yet, to get some NBA experience to play professional basketball in their system and with their coaches, to see if they can actually become a full-time NBA player.
Okay, because it's almost like the bullpit for the baseball. How the pitcher, they can pull them up. They go back there and practice, but they can always make that call and pull them up, and they got to be ready to play.
Exactly.
Okay. So, what do you do outside of basketball? What else do you like to do?
So, the thing about me, I always wanted to be in the NBA. I wanted to do things at the highest level, and I got a taste of that working with the New Jersey Nets and working with Hall of Famers like Jason Kidd and Vince Carter, Richard Jefferson, and I was very, very fortunate. And all it did was make me want to work even harder, because I knew that's where I wanted to be. And it's incredibly difficult to, one, get your foot in the door, and then even still, once you do get your foot in the door, to stay at that level. Division I coaching is very hard, and there's 350 coaching staffs in Division I. There's only 30 NBA teams. So, what I realized was I'm not somebody that's, I don't have anything special about me. My father doesn't coach in the NBA. I didn't play in the NBA. I'm not a superstar. I'm just a guy that works really hard. That's all I've ever had going for me. So I kind of decided I had to dedicate myself to the game of basketball, and I'm going to sacrifice a lot of other things, whether it was friends or dating or a social life and all those kinds of things. And I'm going to chase being a professional coach, and it's worked for me. I've been fortunate, but I don't do a whole lot of things outside of basketball. I love the game. I love my players, and I love my family. And I just, unfortunately, I wish I got to do a lot of other things, but at the same time, I got to be a professional basketball coach, and I got to be in an NBA huddle, and I got to take part in the NBA playoffs and be in NBA locker rooms and coach NBA players, and to be a head coach in professional basketball in the G League and to make the playoffs. So I think when you really, really want something, you got to sacrifice for it. And I have no regrets about missing out on some other activities that would have been fun, hanging out with my buddies, trips they got to take, because most of them say, man, I wish I was a basketball coach, and I wish I worked in the NBA and all those things. So I really just focus on basketball, and when I have any free time, I take too much of it coaching basketball. So I try to spend every free second I have with my family and my kids.
Okay, so now we have COVID-19. And one of the things that we ask our guests, especially coaches and players, is what if there's no more sports? Being a professional coach is your dream, but what if sports is taken away? What would you do?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Something I don't like thinking about. I don't like when you put it that way. Life with no sports is tough. It's tough to comprehend. No football on Saturdays, and man, no World Cup, and no baseball, and no NBA. That's not a world I'm too excited about. But that's a possibility. But it comes back to always being prepared, and what do you have to fall back on? What was your education? What else can you do? To prepare, to provide for your family and things like that. So what I've realized when I started out, I said, hey, my goal is to be I always wanted to be a college head coach. I wanted to coach at, North Carolina, something like that. And then I realized, hey, there might be something even better. I'd like to coach in the NBA. That'd be amazing. And I got an opportunity to do that, not a head coach. But so what I've realized in my 19 years of coaching is, my goals changed a lot from the level I wanted to coach at and who I wanted to coach to reprioritizing what was important. And the thing I realized was helping people and helping mostly players and student athletes was what fulfilled me the most. And it didn't matter that I won a basketball game or my team won or we made the playoffs. The things I remember, that the greatest joys I got in coaching were seeing the players in the locker room jumping up and down and pouring drinks on each other, and seeing themselves hopefully fulfill their potential and get opportunities that they didn't have prior to playing on our team or the things like that. So I could see myself being a teacher and a high school coach, or just taking part in other people's lives and trying to give back all the things that a lot of people have given to me. I've had some incredible teachers, I've had some incredible coaches, and again, I'm very fortunate to have an incredible family that's been invaluable to me, that taught me so many things about life in general and sports, and that have prepared me and helped me be successful. So I'd like to give back in any way I could, and I'd love to do that, being a teacher. And but I really hope it doesn't come to that. I hope we get back to sports at some point, and there's some smart scientists out there working on a vaccine, and we get back to sports as we know it.
I know. It's just amazing how much we depend on these things and how it just not having them trickle down to so many other things. Not buying clothes to go to the game trickles down on clothing stores going out of business. I mean, it's just amazing how things are so connected, and when you don't have one, how it affects everything.
What amazes me is the experience. We think about sports, guys just like sports, or football moms just like sports. Sports bring us together. And I don't like hockey, but there's people in my family that watch the Stanley Cup. We all get together and watch the Stanley Cup or the World Cup. Soccer is not really my thing, but it brings you together. If there's a Duke, North Carolina basketball game, people in my family know, we got to be watching that. So my entire family is there together, and we're talking trash. And if there's a big SEC football game on Saturday nights, we have to be watching Alabama, Georgia, or whatever.
Right.
There's more to sports than just the people that play it or the people that like it. It's ingrained in our society, and I love it, and I wouldn't want to be. I hope it doesn't come to that.
I mean, you just lit up something in me. It's about family coming together. Like, it is so real. Even if you don't like it, it still brings the family together. I'm just blessed that I was, raised into, actually basketball was first, and football. Like my grandfather and my late uncle, he played basketball. So I would go to the basketball games all the time. I would get to sit down with the cheerleaders. Like, I remember all of that. But it just brings the family together. You are so real. It ain't just about, oh, I don't know what people be thinking. I ain't even trying to guess. But but that just lit up something in me. Like, that is so real. Even if you don't like it, but everybody together.
My mom has watched more basketball and more football than she would ever have wanted in her entire life. But she got to spend, I can see her spending a lot of time with her family and loving that her family is enjoying that, and that made her happy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It just brings us together,
Right, especially grandparents. Like Miss Karen went to Soto when we always had to go to the semifinals, and that's when the grandparents come out, right?
Yeah.
Everybody come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
When they get close to state, I'm talking about the whole city. You see the grandmother, the grandfather, the aunties,
Yes.
everybody. And it's just so awesome. Like, and then the kids see all that support. Like, dang, my grandmama out here. my uncle, everybody, not just my mom and my dad, so
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yes.
Totally
Yes.
agree.
So, Coach, what advice would you give someone interested in pro sports who's not currently at a recognized school of their choice?
An athlete trying to break into pro sports.
Yeah, but they're in that at a school that's not that popular.
Mm, good question.
Yeah. So what one thing that I think is really cool over the past few years, especially in basketball, I can't speak to other sports, but uh, people have started to realize that there's a lot of talented players all over the place, and they
Mm.
don't just come from Michigan State, and they don't just come from the University of Texas. Uh, they're everywhere. Some kids come out of the woodwork and play at Lehigh, and C.J. McCollum was an NBA draft pick. Most people never heard of Lehigh. Probably never will because it's not. There's no reason to. It's a tiny school in Pennsylvania that plays in the Patriot League that doesn't produce NBA players. Um, CJ got drafted by the Portland Trailblazers, whose best most visible player, Damian Lillard, went to Weber State. So the Portland Trailblazers are being led by a Weber State graduate and a Lehigh graduate, and these are two of the best guards in the entire NBA. Competing with Russell Westbrook and all these places. So, don't sell yourself short because I only play it at a certain level. And you can get anywhere you want to get to from any level. And it was really interesting to me watching The Last Dance. Michael Jordan's story on ESPN recently. Scottie Pippen. Most people have no idea where Scottie Pippen went to school. Tiny.
UCA, that's where I went. University of Central Arkansas. Went to school with Scotty.
But you're not most people. You know what's going on. But people say, Scottie Pippen, and how many people would know he's from UCA? You got to be a basketball lifer or something, or from Arkansas maybe. But he's one of the 50 greatest NBA players. Dennis Rodman. Where did Dennis Rodman go to school? It wasn't UCLA or Kentucky or North Carolina. In the G League even, we had a kid come to open tryouts, which are anybody off the streets that we've never heard of anybody. And he was so impressive that we brought him onto the team. This was October. It's a kid we never heard of, never seen play. The kid scored 35 points twice for us, was our starting two guard, and is now making six figures in overseas. And it's a Division II player that I had never heard of, never watched any film on. People that come to these open tryouts almost never get that kind of opportunity. But he's a talented player. And our general manager said, "Man, who is this guy?" And I said, "I don't know, but he's pretty good." And he saw something in him. He got an opportunity to showcase his skills on our team that maybe he wouldn't have got somewhere else. And this Division II player was better than a ton of high major Power 5 conference players. And he showcased it night in and night out. And people say, "Where did this kid come from?" I said, "I have no idea, but I'm thankful he walked into the gym that day. He made me look a lot smarter than I was." So, just having that faith, believing in yourself. And I think another thing, whether it's the recruiting process or trying to play at the highest level, is figuring out. I don't think people realize you have to figure out what people are looking for at that level you're trying to get to. So at the Division I level, what are coaches looking for? At the NBA level, what are coaches looking for? And the example I give is, 10 years ago, or I guess it's been 13 years ago when I was in the NBA, the five men, the big guys in the NBA were, you could put them in a box. And this you could write down 3 or 4 things. This is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to play with their back to the basket. They're going to post up. They can be big and slow. That's okay. But the game is completely different. So a guy that was really, really talented in that NBA in 2007, might not be able to play in today's game because what they're looking for in five men these days are size, athleticism, lateral quickness, ability to shoot threes. A big guy shooting threes 13 years ago was unheard of. I mean, you were laughed at and you were mocked, and now, five men shoot 100 threes every day in practice. It's just part of the game. So things have changed, and you got to realize what teams are looking for. So if you're really good at X, Y, and Z, and in the league or this team or that level, they value A, B, and C, you're kind of out of luck. So I think taking that approach to what are people looking for? What are the skills I need? What is prioritized will help you get there, because you can be really good at something and it might just not translate to either the pro game or to the Division I level.
Now that's good. So let's tell the parents, as far as college, the parents that are coming out of high school, what is something that a college coach is looking at in recruiting their child? What kind of attributes should our college coaches looking at when they're looking at recruiting?
So again, it kind of comes back to that evaluation process, and I think it's a crazy process. I've seen some some crazy things go down, but the most interesting thing to me is that coaches, even in the same conference, can be looking for the exact opposite things. I coached at Lehigh. What we were looking for in a player was completely opposite to what our arch rival down the street, Lafayette, was looking for. So somebody that could be a star at Lehigh might not even get any interest, any phone calls, any letters from Lafayette, not because they weren't talented enough, just because what they were actually looking for was very different. And that's where I think it goes to doing your research and finding out, whether it's your AAU coach or somebody, trying to figure out what teams are looking for, and if they don't like your style of play or your skill set, it's going to be a lot easier to change the school to find a school that is looking for your skill set than it is to switch up and try and just become this different player. So to me, there's a couple things that stand out in basketball. Shooting is the number one thing across the board at every level that teams are looking for. Teams just shoot threes left and right. They chuck it up there at every level. If you can really, really shoot, if you're an elite shooter, that is always going to stand out. So it doesn't matter if you're slow like me. If you can really shoot, that's going to stand out to almost every coach. Not every coach, but that's really a skill that translates. Lateral quickness and size is something that a lot of teams are valuing. It's less about the position that you play these days in basketball and more about your versatility. So, when you have that size and you have that lateral quickness, those are two things in basketball that really stand out. So, it's not a great answer, but I think the key is figuring out what each coach is looking for, because I've seen coaches watch some really good players and say he couldn't play for us, and I just thought, wow, that's crazy. But I understood where he was coming from, because he didn't fit into our system, or he didn't fit what we were looking for. And it's not just coaches on different teams. I sat in on recruiting meetings, where the head coach, I said, Coach, this guy's really good, and the coach said he's nowhere near good enough. And what he was looking for, and he's the boss. So again, it comes down to figuring out what not the assistant coach likes, but the head coach, because he's the guy making the decisions, and that's a tricky task. But if you can figure that out, if you can see how their teams play, maybe you can figure out what style of play or what's important to the coach. Sometimes it's hard to do though, but that's kind of the best piece of advice I can give.
I think for NBA, they're getting taller and taller and taller. I have a nephew, I think he's 6'4" or something like that, and he's wishing that he grows 2 or 3 more inches. And I'm just like, you're already tall, but you're looking for players that are 6'8", 6'9", taller. Is that almost an automatic ticket if they're like 6'8", 6'9", 7 feet tall?
So I'll say I think it used to be, because the game was a little different, and if you were 7 feet tall, you had a legitimate chance. And now, there are guys in the NBA playing that same position that are 6'8", that are incredibly athletic, that have this wingspan that they can just stand flat-footed and almost touch the rim. And teams have realized that speed and length are more important than height. You know, if you can't move your feet, the game of basketball has become too athletic and too lateral. You can't be slow and play the game. So a 6'6" guy, you know, is more valuable maybe if he has long arms and lateral quickness than a 6'9" stiff who just can't move. Because the skill set they're looking for is versatility, guys that can guard multiple positions and things like that. And pretty much these days there's 5 guys on the court. Obviously, 1 through 4, you know, many players are being asked to switch and to guard all those positions. So a guy that's 6'9" or 6'10" playing the 4 position is going to be consistently asked to guard point guards. You know, Russell Westbrook and these incredibly athletic freaks of nature that I have no idea how they got so big and fast and quick. But you know, that's the task they're being asked with, and on some teams that's 1 through 5. So size always helps. You know, wingspan is always important, but the biggest thing I think is that, I guess, a combination. You know, if you're 5'8" and quick, you know, you're fighting an uphill battle. But if you have some decent size, that athleticism, that lateral quickness specifically, there's some guys who are fast, you know, who might be able to run the 100 or the 400 or something like that. But in basketball, it's that lateral quickness, that stop and start that some guys seem to have and others just don't.
Now, do you do any kind of evaluation where players can send you their highlights and stuff, and you evaluate them and kind of tell them areas that they should work on? Do you do anything like that as far as training?
So no, not typically. In the G League, you know, that you're not allowed to have much interaction with, you know, high school and college athletes, unfortunately, until they become professionals.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, you're restricted. Okay. Okay. Well, it's been wonderful. I think I've learned that G League is the league that's in the United States versus going to another country. And making $35,000 in 6 months is, you know, and not that's if you could save it all, that's pretty good, you know,
No
because
doubt about
Right,
it.
because they get free home boarding, right?
yeah, I mean, some people work
Yeah.
and
So
make 70,000 a year, so they made 35 and half in doing something they love to do, and so the other half would be working a real job, I guess.
So a lot of times they'll spend the summers training and hopefully they put themselves in the position in the winter, you know, to get a 6-figure contract overseas. So, you know, it's a great opportunity. And like you said, if they're smart with their money, it's not a lot of money, but it's a lot more than it used to be. And the opportunity that they get is what's really invaluable, because, you know, if you go and make $35,000, that's not a whole lot, but you can turn that $35,000 into $200,000 a year in Italy, or $175,000 for the next 10 years. You know, that's a pretty decent living. That's a pretty decent life for you and your family.
Now, you know, where, you know, the football team has 53 on the roster, but 32 teams, and then you have your teams in Canada. But compared to, even though it's 15 players on the NBA team, but you have so many overseas, is it kind of average out to be about the same amount of players?
Same amount of players.
Opportunities for basketball as it is for football? Because there's so many more teams in basketball than it is in football?
Yeah, so I'm not an expert on the professional football system. To me, it seems like there might even be more opportunities in basketball because there are so many other leagues. I don't know of a ton of other leagues in professional football. I know there's a
Right.
few, but you know, there's a professional basketball league in the summer in Puerto Rico. There's a league in Mexico. There's a league in almost every country. Some countries have 2 tiers. Japan has 2 tiers. Germany has first and second division, I believe. You know, there's teams in Lithuania and Russia and kind of all over. So to me, there's a great opportunity. And I know some people get hung up. I want to play in the NBA. And to me, if you can make what I would say is a lot of money. $175,000 a year is a lot of money. 100 grand a year is a lot of money to me. To play professional basketball, that's a great opportunity. That's a great life for yourself and to provide for your family. So, there's nothing to shortchange or be unhappy about if that's your path.
Right. Because we had a WNBA player, Shakina Strickland, on, and so she was just saying that over in the other country, they are almost like worshipped. The fans and stuff are so much. I mean, it's like the bomb. Your celebrities over there in the other countries versus here, WNBA. So I imagine it's that same way for basketball players in the other country too. So it might be worth it to go play in another country. So, so is there anything else you would like to tell our parents as we're coming to a close? Any other nuggets you want to tell them about recruiting?
Yeah, so with recruiting, a couple of things that always stood out to me. Just do your homework. Be prepared for the process. Talk to people ahead of time. Find out the rules. Ask questions. Understand that it's probably the first time you're going through it as a parent, or maybe the second time, maybe. But the coaches go through this hundreds of times every year. So they're very, very good at their salesmanship. And don't let the coaching staff explain the process to you, because I never wanted to lie. I'm a very straightforward person, but I would frame my answers in a way that was telling the truth and putting my program in the best possible light. And maybe I was giving you the answer, maybe not the full answer, maybe not, oh, hey, down the street, this school actually does it a little differently. Hey, this is the great things happening at my school. So, know that process or figure out that process. Ask people outside of the universities, the AAU coaches or the high school coaches, anybody, someone that's been through the process, have those answers before you go in, because every school, that they're not going to be dishonest. They're not going to lie to you. They shouldn't, but they are always going to frame things that put things in the best light for their school. So, the other thing that stood out, people were so appreciative of being involved in the process, being on the phone with a college coach or coming to visit campus. Nobody really put coaches on the spot with tough questions. And if my child is ever fortunate enough to get in that opportunity, I'm not so sure that'll be the case, but we'll see. I'd put coaches on the spot and I'd ask them tough questions, and if you're really interested in me, that there shouldn't be tough questions. We should be able to have an honest discussion. Where am I on your recruiting list? Where am I on your depth chart? Have you offered other players at my position? Because one of my main jobs as an assistant coach was to have a deep recruiting list where I could keep some kids on the list, but kind of keep them at arm's length. So if we didn't get our top tier guys, we still had players to go and recruit that we hadn't just forgotten about. Well, those players on our B list, they could be somebody else's A list. So, ask tough questions, put people on the spot, and do I have an a scholarship offer on the table or not? Can I accept that scholarship offer? Some coaches will offer scholarships and say you can't accept it until this date. But at that point, to me, that you don't have a scholarship offer on the table. So okay, to me, you show your interest in me by letting me know, you send me all these letters and these calls, but I don't have a scholarship offer from you. So okay, at least I understand where I stand in the process with you. So put people on the spot and do it in a tactful way, but I don't think it's wrong to ask tough questions that really let you know where you stand and help clarify your family, your student athletes' thought process in a tricky evaluation process. And then couple other things I think, or maybe the last thing, I think you have to value your opportunity more than your level. And CJ McCollum, could have, if somebody had been smart enough, he could have walked on at Michigan State or Ohio State or something, and he could have played at those places. I don't think he becomes the player he does. Well, I shouldn't say it. He's the hardest working guy I've ever seen in my life, and I think he ends up where he ends up regardless of what happens to him. So he may be a bad example, but I think people underestimate the opportunity that you have to be on the floor and to play. I don't think players on the bench improve. I think they learn some things. I think you become a better basketball player. I think you become a better football player by playing football and having the opportunity to play through mistakes, to be the guy that's getting the ball, to be the guy that the team is relying on, and to being in the position where when you make a mistake, you're needed and you get to play through that mistake. You get to learn from that opportunity. So many places, if you go and you're a freshman, you come off the bench, you make a mistake, you go back and sit on the bench. You just don't become a better basketball player that way. So value the opportunity of playing and not just being wanted, because in the recruiting process, coaches want everybody, but some places you're needed. And when you're needed, it's very, very different. You're going to be treated differently. You're going to be valued differently. If the opportunity that you have coincides with the level you want, fantastic. If you want to go to wherever, if you want to go to SMU, because that's a really good basketball program, and they have a need, and then it's kind of a perfect fit. But that opportunity that you get is more important than the level that you play at, because you can be a Division II player and end up in the NBA. You can be a walk-on and turn yourself into a scholarship player or turn yourself into a pro. You just have to have an opportunity to showcase yourself.
That's good.
So I think that might be all I got.
Miss Karen, is you stuck? You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I've been talking too much. She went on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute. Mute. Push the mute button. Well, guys, until she figure it out.
We finna go. Thank you for watching the show.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Thank you, Coach Krueger. A lot of nuggets you have given us, not even just in basketball, but in life.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate
in life.
it.
And so hopefully we can take that and run with it in life.
I love what you're doing. I love your show. I'm excited for you. I appreciate you having me on. Wish you guys the best of luck.
Thank you, sir. All
Take
right.
care.
Well, Miss Karen?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, I was trying to tell you, you on mute.
Oh. All right then. Well, it's been a great show. And you guys will be back on Tuesday. Stay tuned.
All right. This
with
is your
my
girl,
host.
Kawashika.
That's right. I'm Karen. See ya.